So you have heard someone saying, I'm applying Agile methodology. You have heard someone saying, I'm a certified Agile project manager. I'm a certified Agile project implementer. You've heard someone saying, I know about Agile. So what exactly is this Agile methodology that we talk about in project management? You're going to find out as we go through this video. So let's get started. In this section of the video, we are going to cover, in terms of Agile ceremonies, or the timelines or the periods which are expected for each and every activity that we expect to see in an Agile environment. Say, for example, the sprint planning meeting. This is expected to run between 2 to 4 hours, which means you're planning on what you're going to do in the next sprint. So this is what is expected, and the team is supposed to commit to that. Then we also have a daily stand-up or daily Scrum meeting. This normally runs for about 15 minutes, maybe at most 20, but 15 minutes is enough. And it should focus only on 3 items. What you did last time or yesterday, what you're planning to do today, and then the impediments and also the blockers. These have to be discussed in that meeting. Don't try to expand the meeting to so many other things like risks, other issues, and so on and so forth. Otherwise, it becomes another normal predictive meeting instead of Agile meeting. Agile meeting must focus only on those 3 items. Then a sprint review meeting is also expected to take between 1 to 2 hours. Sprint review meeting, this is when you are showing or you are showcasing what has been done in a sprint to the end user or to the customer, what you have produced in terms of increments, what you have produced in terms of iteration. And you also get feedback from the user or acceptance from the user that it has been done. So that must run for at least 1 to 2 hours. Then retrospective is normally 1 hour to 1.5 hours. Retrospective, what do we mean by this? This is when the team is going to relook at the executed sprint. What was done wrong? What was not done properly? What should be done more? What should be done less? Lessons learned, the do's and don'ts. So normally between 1 to 1.5 hours is enough. Then the backlog refinement. Remember, the product backlog is not something that is static. It's always changing throughout the project. And there's always a process to refine, which means you might gain new requirements from users. Remember, Agile, you accept requirements until the last minute. So you have to refine it. Refine it, just making sure that it's prioritized the right way. And you also move up and down the user stories of the requirements depending on the value that you're expecting to get from there. So it is quite important in an Agile environment to maintain these periods so that you can deliver successfully. So in this section of the video, we want to cover the Agile artifacts, which means the components that you should expect in an Agile environment. Remember, we covered the flow. Your backlog, you need your sprint review meeting, all the way to retrospective. So we now want to go through what you actually have to appreciate with these artifacts. So let us go through them one by one. So the first one we're going to start with is the product backlog. Product backlog is owned by the product owner. And what do we expect from here? We're expecting an ordered list of everything that might be needed in the product. So if you want to create a certain product, whatever you need, you put it in the product backlog. And it's always dynamic. It evolves as learning increases. So it is owned by the product owner. It also contains user stories and features or fixes that you need. So if the users are going to come up with any new requirements, it has to be added by the product owner into the product backlog. And then it's ordered by value and risk. So the main intention of Agile methodology is to provide value as quickly as possible. So product backlog must be ordered by value and risk, which means what value are you going to get and what is the risk associated with that. And it must be refined regularly with the team. Remember, we said we need to set up aside about 1 hour to 1.5 hours for backlog refinement in an Agile methodology. So you must refine it as you move. After every sprint, the product owner might want to refine. Refine it means might be adding more user stories or features, or even removing some of them, and then prioritizing, rearranging them before you go to the sprint meeting. Then, the next artifact that you should expect to find in an Agile environment is the sprint backlog. Sprint backlog is nothing other than the list of features that have to be delivered or concluded or completed in a specific sprint by the development team. So as the development team is producing the features, they go through the sprint backlog. And within that sprint backlog, they take item by item and then deliver or complete it before the inviting the customer for confirmation. So let us understand what exactly is covered within this sprint backlog. So a sprint backlog is actually a subset of a product backlog, because you select what you want to conclude in that sprint from the product backlog. So that's why it's called a subset, plus a plan for delivering the sprint goal. You also want to plan how to deliver. Sprint backlog is owned by the development team. That's the difference between sprint backlog and product backlog. Get it right. Product backlog is owned by the product owner, and then sprint backlog is owned by the development team. Then it is also created during sprint planning. There's a sprint planning meeting. You're agreeing and assuring or even committing to complete certain features within a certain sprint during that planning. So this is when you're actually creating the backlog. You choose from the product backlog to sprint backlog. It is also updated daily during Scrum meetings or daily meetings. What do we mean by this? So when you're doing your daily meetings, you are also discussing what was completed yesterday. So assuming your sprint backlog had 10 items, you completed 2 of them. So in the daily meeting, you update that you have completed two of them. You're also discussing what you're planning to do next. You also discuss that. Then it's also visible to all stakeholders. This is one of the main advantages of Agile methodology. Most of the things are very visible in terms of what exactly is the team working on right now, as compared to predictive. Predictive, in most cases, the team, they can work even offshore, then they can bring the finished product later. Let us understand what is an increment in an Agile environment. In increment, these are additional features from the previous sprint, and they are all coming from the product backlog, which in most cases, or in some cases, you find the MVP, which is minimum viable product, is actually created, completed, and then it's actually being used in production. Then increments, it means additional requirements or features. They are also delivered through the sprint, accepted by the user during the sprint review meeting, and then they are also pushed to production. So it's one of the artifacts that you should expect to see in an Agile environment. So let us go through the increment to understand what exactly is it all about. What does it mean to have an increment? So an increment is actually the sum of all completed product backlog items, meeting the definition of done and potential release. What do we mean by this? When we're talking of increment, we are going through the product backlog, and then we create our sprint backlog. When something is now ready or is potential for release, that's what is called an increment. So it's actually built every sprint and no exceptions, and it must meet the definition of done. People should agree, what does it mean when we say done? What does done mean in an Agile environment? And then it must add to all prior increments. That's why it's called increment. You have something earlier, then you add something on top of that. Then it must be inspected at a sprint review meeting. So sprint review meeting, this is when the development team is going to invite the customers or the users to showcase what they've done in a sprint. So in this sprint review meeting, the customers, this is when they start seeing what has changed from the previous product from the previous service as compared to the current one. So that is also very, very important to make sure that your increment is also verified by the users during the sprint review meeting.